Hey, this is the first video series that I'm calling Sommversations, where I interview people from the wine business who are actually, doing things in the wine business as opposed to just, me making videos as a hobby. The first one in this video, we're talking with Eric Hiltz from Bin412 Pittsburgh. We talk about how he got started, what goes into planning the wine dinners, the amazing wine dinners that he does. We taste a Finger Lakes Cabernet Franc from the Ravines winery, and and you get a lot of good tips from Eric on where to go when you're visiting the Finger Lakes. Hope you enjoy it. All right, so welcome back to Drinking It In. You may notice a different layout here because I have a guest. And this is guest number 1 of the Sommversation series. So the idea behind these Sommversations, which hopefully you like the naming, is that I'm bringing people that I'm either fans of or know personally through social media and whatnot, and bringing them on to just understand a little bit about their backstory and what they're currently doing in the world of wine, because all of these folks, any guest that I bring on, is doing more of a business than I am, right? This is just a hobby. I'm still a just somebody who's obsessed with wine and spirits, but folks like Eric here, actually have while you do have a day job, you have a business centered around wine dinners and education. So first, I'm going to do a little introduction on you. So Eric, I think we connected via Instagram. Probably been connected for a couple of years now, and I've naturally gravitated towards your content just because of, your knowledge is off the charts. And then of course I see a bunch of the wine dinners and the highlights, and I'm always like, when am I going to get back to Pittsburgh? Which, given all this crap, who the hell knows? But I've just always been a fan, and we've had some really good interaction. And I think I'm honored to have you as the first guest. And I know that. So Bin412. So 412 is the area code of Pittsburgh. For folks who don't know, you do a lot of impressive events, and I'm sure there's more that you do to it, in the along with those. But so I'm glad to have you on, and just I don't know if you want to add a little something to that rambling intro.
No, it's great. Thanks for having me. I agree. I think it's been a few years we've been following each other on Instagram, and then have kind of moved on to even LinkedIn from a more professional networking.
Oh, that's
I think you said let's complete the social networking loop here and connect in all ways. So I love what you do as well. And when I was just kind of starting to do some things on YouTube and IGTV, I saw that you were doing some things as well. And what I liked about your stuff was it was a little bit more targeted and condensed, right? My videos tended to be 10 minutes dissertations on, farming laws in Chianti Classico.
A lot of info.
Yeah, I think there's a market for that, but I think what people need to kind of break down some of the barriers to wine is just someone that keeps it simple and gives them just enough to kind of be a hook, and then let them go and explore on their own a little bit. So I've always, I've kind of used your stuff as a little bit of a guide for me to say, keep it under 10 minutes, for goodness sakes. I was getting over 12 and 13-minute videos at times, and now I'm really trying to target that 6 to 8 minute, which I think is still a lot of content. But for those that really want to geek out, I try to give you a little bit more,
Cool. So I was thinking back. It's funny. So I know we'll get to the wine in a little bit. We're going to be tasting a Cabernet Franc from the Ravines winery in the Finger Lakes, which I know you have a lot of experience in that wine region, and you were just there recently. So we'll get some really good perspective. But I was thinking back to the first time I had a Ravines Cabernet Franc, and it was actually at a restaurant in Pittsburgh. I think it's called Restaurant 11, which is in the Street District.
Yeah.
One of my favorite places down in Pittsburgh, and I do distinctly remember. I don't have a lot of experience with their wines, but I distinctly remember enjoying that one. So I think it was good that we ended on this one. The original idea was that I was trying to grow a local, pseudo local network, right? To pull something out of the cellar, and then where I have doubles, and so we get the guests one wine and get have me have another bottle. We taste the same wine. We did reasonably well given the distance and the social distancing. So I think that'll be fun. But I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit on just a couple of things that you that you've done around your business, right? Because I think certainly if people are in the Pittsburgh area, they got to get on your mailing list. They got to be aware of your dinners and the events that you hold, because they're stellar, right? I will eventually plan a business trip around one.
Yeah.
So I know that the hardest thing in some cases is just actually starting something. So I was wondering how, I've been wine obsessed for a long time, right? And I'm sure you've been much the same, but I was wondering, when you first thought of the idea of, okay, I can do these types of things, or I'd like to build a business, how long did it take you to actually start? And and maybe what was the sort of a fun learning experience from the process?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The hardest part is just starting, right? And I've been studying, researching, and most importantly, drinking fine wines from all over the world for about 20 years before I decided to do anything with it. And all of my friends, I'd be the guy that we'd be at a work dinner, or we'd be out to a restaurant, and someone would always hand me the list and let me pick it. And what I found that they liked about me picking the wine wasn't just that I picked a good one, but I had a story with it. And I think that's one of the great things about wine, is there's so many stories. And as you get into really studying different regions and different terroirs and different producers and different grapes, certainly there's a lot of stories behind these bottles. And I always like to say, a lot of work goes into making these things, right? There's a lot of hands involved, from those planting vineyards and tending vineyards to harvesting the grapes, and certainly vinifying the wine, but even the marketing and the distribution around it. And I like to believe that all that's done for one reason, and that's to put it in a bottle so that guys like you and I, or families and friends, can enjoy it together and think about it and talk about it. And I think wine is one of those unique beverages that really you can just sit around and think about. I mean, I have wines that I smell sometimes for 15 minutes before I drink. There's just so much going on. And especially places that I've been there before, I think about what that year must have been like. And it's a really romantic thing for me. I always say beer, I'm a big beer guy, but beer is a recipe. You try it, you don't like it, you do it again, and you tweak it. The best guys in a vineyard, the best guys and gals making wine, I mean, think about it, maybe 60 chances in their life to get it right? Yeah. I mean, they're dealing with what Mother Nature gives them every year. And that generational knowledge that passes down is just amazing to me. It's just a really romantic kind of concept here. So I took all that, and obviously I was very passionate about it. And what I realized is that I really liked talking about it just as much as I liked studying it. I liked sharing those stories. And so I decided I would do something with it. And really what it started as was, I'm going to host some wine dinners. I'm going to try to partner with some Pittsburgh restaurants. We've got a really good dining scene here. The wine scene is burgeoning, but it's not New York City or anything like that, right? But it's getting there. But I didn't see anyone at a fine dining establishment that could navigate a wine list for the guest and kind of coach them towards different things. And even when you found someone, they're selling you on Cabernet and Merlot and Syrah and Pinot. They're not stretching the boundaries at all. And, so what I tried to do was, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to host wine dinners, and I'm going to put some pretty esoteric things together. I want people, I always say the world of wine is a big place. Expand your palates, drink new regions, drink new varieties. And that was kind of my goal. That was the mantra of Bin412. And it kind of took off. I did the first couple. They sold out within days. A lot of friends and neighbors, to be honest. And then word just kind of got out. And the Instagram and the social channels kind of, I wouldn't say they've blown up. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a primetime influencer that's, 30,000 followers. I think I've got about 3,900 right now. But it's enough that, when I put an event out, I get some interest, and there's always a new face that shows up at these events. And so they're wonderful. They're a lot of fun for me. And, I have a really good time turning people on to new things. You asked the hardest part. It's starting. The biggest lesson learned I had, Pennsylvania's got some really archaic wine laws and liquor laws, right? And so that's been a big challenge for me, is just navigating this whole concept of producer, distributor, state store system. Where do I fit into there? I can't actually buy wine and bring it to an event. I've got to work through a restaurant license, or I've got to have, if I do a private event, the person hosting the event has to buy the wine. I would put a list together for them. So that's a little bit of a challenge. If I wanted to do this and do it the way I wanted to do it, I'd be the distributor. I'd be in charge of being able to bring whatever I wanted into the state. Yeah. That's been a real challenge, just trying to figure out how to navigate all that.
Oh, that's interesting, because I know that, New Hampshire has that same system. Yeah. Although they tend to have really good selections in their stores, but I can only imagine, it's weird, like the idea of not having independently owned wine and liquor stores, to me, because
it's a lot of homogeneity, right? I go into a liquor store in Pennsylvania and I largely have the same selection if I'm in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, the middle of nowhere in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, or in Scranton, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the good thing is they've got a lot of purchasing power. So they bring the consumer some pretty good deals on what they have a chairman's selection program. And you can find some pretty good deals. They also use that, though, as a way to go in and either strong arm a producer, or having a producer that just wants to dump a vintage because it wasn't up to par and is sitting on a lot of inventory. Pennsylvania can help clear it out. So it's still a mixed bag. You kind of have to know what you're doing. So there's pros and cons, right? But I agree, there's something missing about walking into a boutique shop and having an owner who's personally tasted every bottle in there and knows why it's on his shelf.
Yeah. Cool. So I didn't realize that you have those types of restrictions on, like you can't be the guy bringing the wine. You have to, it's got to be going through the venue or even through somebody who would be hosting an event. That's interesting.
Yeah. Cool. I learned the hard way by talking to a couple of good friends of mine from college who are attorneys, and told me that the way I was starting this was probably not the best thing from a liability perspective.
Oh, so maybe
yeah,
we won't go into. I won't pry. So like with the dinners, so I think like you were saying, you get into an extraordinary level of detail, and I think, it's indicative of your understanding of like how wine's made, what soil types and terroir and all that, which is something that I'm very much above the surface on. Like I barely touch some of that stuff, and it's something I need to really get more. I have enough knowledge in it, but it doesn't really. It's not something that I tend to gravitate towards, and I do need to understand some of that stuff a little better so that it informs the the tasting notes a bit more. But I guess when you go, first off, when you're doing these dinners, like I want to understand what's after you get done with a dinner, at all this planning and all this talking and and especially now with everything social distancing and wearing a mask and this and that, I want to understand what your favorite part of those events is, but also how do you go about choosing wine? Naturally you want the wines to pair with the food and per se, but how do you go about choosing those wines? Because like you said, it's like you can, you're having some seafood, there's a billion dry white wines that you can choose, but how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of doing the dinners. I've had a couple opportunities actually sit down and work with chefs and bring. Actually, we're going to be tasting Ravines. I had a dinner that was planned, and then COVID happened, and we had to cancel it. But Lisa and/or Morton Hallgren, the owners, and Morton is the winemaker, Ravines, were going to come down and host the dinner with me. And I had an opportunity to get some samples and sit down with chef and literally taste through the entire portfolio. And we just bounced ideas off each other. I was explaining what I was tasting. He was thinking immediately of food, things that would kind of match that smokiness, that herbaceousness, or the certain fruit characteristic I was pulling out. That was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, that dinner didn't get to be held. We're gonna reschedule it at a later date. But in general, I would say I like to, I'm always tasting different wines, and when I find something that I like or I gravitate towards, I kind of hold on to it, and I think this is going to be in a dinner one day. I don't know what dinner I have planned. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know in my mind what that tasted like, and that I think that's something unique that I need to bring to people. I've not done a Sauvignon Blanc at one of my dinners. I rarely do Cabernet or Merlot. And if I do, I'm doing from an atypical region. So I really, again, I try to get people to learn something new while they're there and not just drink the same old thing that they're used to drinking. So that's kind of the most rewarding thing for me. I love the planning, and I love kind of piecing together, the wines that I want to serve, and then working with the chef to figure out the right food that would match that. But what I enjoy the absolute most is seeing those like light bulbs go off in people's heads, right? Oh my gosh, I'm drinking a wine from Greece. I would walk past this 80 times on a shelf and I wouldn't even look at it. And if I did, I wouldn't buy it. Yeah, Muscafilero. I just poured a Muscafilero at my last tasting, at my last dinner. And I tell you, I mean, it's a wonderful wine. If you think about, the origins of wine, right? Not to get too off topic, but, in Georgia, Armenia, I mean, it's 6,000 BC, there's remnants of winemaking. Greece wasn't too far behind, 4,500 BC. And just by way of comparison, France is like 600 BC, right? So there's 4,000 years of winemaking going on in Greece before France ever planted a vine. And, you see these names, Ayurvedico, Assyrtiko, Muscafilero, Malaguzia, right? Those are the easier ones to pronounce. I mean, some of them are really esoteric. Zinamrvo. Why would you ever buy that? Number one, you don't know what it tastes like. You can't pronounce it. It's just, it's taking a risk. And I love kind of taking that risk out of it for people, right? I've tried all these wines. This is a really good example I think you'll like. And then I compare it to something they're used to having, right? So I just did a whole thing on Balkan Peninsula wines with, Plavec Mali and Blatina and Vranets. And, it's really hard to get someone to buy a bottle of that wine. But if you say, hey, this one kind of reminds me of a Sangiovese and this one kind of reminds me of a Grenache, it starts to build that bridge for people a little bit and maybe get them to take some risks and get outside their comfort zone.
Cool. Yeah, like I try to do that, especially with some of the stuff where, people are definitely not familiar with it. I always, and I haven't been good at it because I've gone back and I've looked at videos and like, I forgot to say, if you like this, you would like this. But like, yeah, I think that's important, especially for some of the weird or the, more under the radar stuff, right? Because again, just drinking, no offense to the Santa Margarita Pinot Grigio people, love to work with them probably, but I mean, geez, how many times you want to see that, right? Are people drinking that? It's like branch out, but it's hard, especially when you get into the like stuff like the Greek wines. They're just crazy. The names are just, they're tough, right? I met there's a place in New York. There's a restaurant called Molivos in New York, which is just an amazing Greek restaurant, right? And they, we had gone there for years, and none of the wines, I mean, it's all Greek wine list. I'll put in some links below because like the guy who runs the wine program there is, again, someone I follow on Instagram, and I happen to go to college with the owner. But the stuff the wines that they always brought out, right, were just amazing. And you're like, I certainly am not going to try to spell this, and I'm a spelling champ, right? But but it's cool to kind of build that, like you said. I'm going to use that build that bridge terminology.
It's fun to get people to try new stuff, right? And you bring up the Santa Margarita thing. I mean, God bless them for their marketing. I don't know what they've done to put together a $23 bottle of Pinot Grigio that people go nuts for and buy. I mean, there's something working for them, so I'm not going to question it. But when I pour someone a $15 bottle of Alto Adige Pinot Grigio, there's a whole different connection that happens in their brain, right? There's a whole different experience that they're having, and you're like, that's what Pinot Grigio can taste like if you get out of your comfort zone and you just drink what's front and center on a shelf, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Terlato folks are amazing at their all of their marketing, but that's part of the game. So
yeah, absolutely.
So what is a grape or a region or something that you're really excited about that people need to be drinking more of? That's probably a hard question for someone like you, because I can imagine you're thinking like, well, I've got a list of like 10 of these things, but give us one. Or
without getting too crazy, right? I mean, I think there's, if you've watched any of the Somm movies, I think one of the regions that, has kind of been up and coming a little bit lately based on the the feedback of sommeliers in that movie is Cru Beaujolais, right? You get palate fatigue from drinking these big, heavy extracted wines, and Gamay and Beaujolais in general is just, I mean, the values are amazing. For $20 to $30, you're getting incredible red wines, a lot of them age-worthy, but with a freshness that just doesn't exist in other parts of the world. So, you know, I'm a big Beaujolais guy. I've kind of laid off of it a little bit lately, but I went through a big Beaujolais phase. I think Spain, you know, if you're in kind of northwest Spain up in Galicia, I think everyone knows Rías Baixas for Albarino, and they have incredible Albarinos. But if you move just a little further inland into Bierzo, they've got a red grape called Mencia that is fantastic, and they've got a white grape called Gadeo, which I'm enamored with. Both of these wines are, you know, $10 to $20 range wines. Old vines, it's a very old region, mountainous, all hand harvested, very concentrated fruit flavors because of the old vine nature. But it's just an unknown region, so I think the value is really there. So, you know, I've been doing a lot of Bierzo. I try to turn people onto that. I think Beaujolais is certainly a good place. And I've been to the Finger Lakes now twice in the last 2 years, and my daughter just started at Bucknell, which is only 2 hours south of the Finger Lakes, and I have a feeling I'm going to be up there at least twice a year for the next 4 years while I have an excuse to go visit her and then shoot up there. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of really good stuff going on up there. Last year, I was really blown away by the whites, and I didn't know what to expect for the reds, and they kind of surprised me more than anything. This year going up, I think I was more enamored with the reds and just pleasantly, again, surprised that the whites are that good. But what I like about it is they're doing a lot of experimentation as well. They're really trying to push the envelope in terms of, you know, making better wines and putting the Finger Lakes on the map, which is kind of weird. It's been a wine growing region since really the 1850s. But premium wine and vinifera vines are a little slower to take on, not until the 50s and 60s. But they're experimenting with a lot of those Georgian varieties, you know, like Cazzotelli and Saperavi, and they're doing Pinot Blanc up there that's just phenomenal. The Cabernet Franc obviously is king on the reds. The Pinots have come a long way, the Pinot Noirs. Just a lot of stuff going on. So I think that's an up-and-coming region, and it's weird to say that because I feel like it's been around for a while. But I still don't think it's gotten its due. And I still think that, you know, there's a lot of winemakers in California, I won't name names, that I think are doing everything they can right now to make wines with that freshness, with that verve and energy. I think they're harvesting earlier, trying to keep sugars in check and alcohol volumes low. They're trying to find very cool climate sites in California. And I kept saying that to winemakers when I was just there. You know, I feel like there's a lot of California wines right now that are doing everything they can to make a wine that tastes like this. So I would give Finger Lakes a look if you haven't already.
Yeah, no, I have. That's an interesting perspective. That's a perfect segue. Although I am going to say, so we did not plan this conversation in any level of detail. And I literally, the video that I posted before this was a Mencia-based wine from Bierzo.
Awesome. Awesome.
So, the Palacios Patalos, which...
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen that. I mean, I get it like every year I see it come out and it's just incredible.
Yeah, look, Chris, one of the reasons I've loved following you is, you know, I see the things that you're drinking and you're not by any way, shape or form just sticking to the status quo either. And, you know, you turned me on, I think it was last summer or the summer before, to Vermentino from Sardinia, and I've been forever hooked. That's like a wine I buy by the case now every summer. So, you know, hey, I've been studying it for 20 years. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not reading or tasting or doing something. And I'm still finding new wines that I'm just enamored with. I just drank Kerner for the first time from Northern Italy, from Alto Adige, and it knocked my socks off. I mean, there's just so much to learn. And, you know, it's just why I encourage people, get out and try something new. There's a lot out there to be impressed with. Yeah,
so I'm actually going to pour a little of this so I get a little more. I opened this. This is a Cabernet Franc from 2017. I opened this like earlier in the day, so it had I guess a little chance to get some air. But I don't have too much experience in the Finger Lakes. I know that I've tried a number of Rieslings and Gewürztraminers, right? Mm-hmm. My most memorable Riesling, at least from Finger Lakes, that I really have enjoyed is from Red Newt Cellars.
Yeah, that's over on the it's on the kind of northwest side of Seneca Lake. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So and that's the other thing. Like, I have absolutely no excuse for not going to the Finger Lake because my best friend from high school lives in Saratoga, right? That's pretty. Yeah. And a good friend of mine lives in Seneca Falls, I think it is.
Oh yeah, you gotta get out there.
What? How many more excuses do I need to get up there? But so I know. So you were up there recently. I know you've had a good amount of experience with the Ravines cellar. So we decided to taste a Cabernet Franc from Ravines. I have a 2017.
Yeah, and I have the 18 that I just bought up there.
That's it. What, an 18 you said?
Yeah, I have the 18.
Cool. So actually, I mean, give us I know that you know these guys pretty well, so maybe just give us a little feel for what they do, and they sound like great people. And I'm definitely dropping your name when I go out there.
Yeah, you should, and not that I carry any weight with them, but we are on a first name basis from planning a dinner together, and I just got back for being up there, and Lisa was kind enough to host us for long enough that I canceled my next appointment. We were there for quite a while. She's a wonderful person, wonderful host. She's a great cook, big foodie. So we talked a lot about food as well. And Morten, her husband, the winemaker, is a Danish guy, and I have a Danish heritage in my family as well. Morten was kind enough to kind of take us back to the production area, and even actually brought us out some fresh crushed Gewürztraminer juice. Hadn't been fermented yet. They just crushed it and were letting it sit with some skin contact overnight, and kind of brought us some breakfast Gewürztraminer juice, which was absolutely amazing, by the way. I like it better than the finished one.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, wonderful people. They started on Keuka Lake. So if you kind of think of the three main lakes, there are Keuka, Seneca, and Cayuga. And their house and their main production facility was over on Keuka Lake to start. And I forget what year it was, but they basically bought a big barn right at White Sulphur Springs Vineyard, which they own, and renovated the barn into their new tasting room. And it's a nice place. They can do events there. They do wine dinners there. They bring chefs in and so on and so forth. That's where all their production is taking place now as well. And their lineup is amazing. They're really making a lot of different wines. And Morten's got this, I think, really, really good appreciation for what he's trying to do, right? He's trying to do mostly dry vinifera vines, right? He's not playing the game that some winemakers up there are playing, where they're still holding on to the Delaware and the Concord and the Catawba and trying to appease the sweet wine drinkers. He's kind of found his home, and he knew he wanted to do dry vinifera from the beginning. He's trained in France, and his wines, he's going to really kind of express what the Finger Lakes can do, which in my mind is really world-class dry wines with good high acid and moderate alcohol levels, right? So they're very European styled. And that's what I love about them. They're not these big, overly ripe, extracted fruit bombs. He's very judicious with his use of oak. He's not overly oaking his wines. And the end result, I think, is just really, really beautiful, high acid, very food-friendly wines across the entire portfolio, from all of his Rieslings. He's even making Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon. I mean, it's, and some really good Bordeaux blends in some of the warmer parts. He's got access, or he owns, I can't remember, a really special vineyard site up there as well called Argetsinger. And this Riesling is just one of the best I've ever had. He does a Pinot from there, and he has a Merlot that he makes out of Argetsinger fruit, or a vineyard right next to Argetsinger, I believe. And it was one of the best Merlots I had in 17. I bought a lot more of the 18s when I was up there, but just really, I mean, he's making Sauvignon Blanc even, which you don't find a ton up there. Just a really wide portfolio, and everything is really well done. One of the best sparkling wines in the Finger Lakes as well.
Oh, that's good to know. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a brand that you can trust, right? Like with whether no matter what it is, right? You see it, you buy it, you're gonna be it's I don't want to say it's safe, but it's smart probably. But
I think that's right. I think it's smart. I think it's representative of what the better winemakers in the Finger Lakes are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if you get it and you don't like it, I would say you may not like Finger Lakes wine.
I would think that would be weird, but again, it is a certain lane, right? It's not, if like you're saying, he's not doing big extracted, really, high alcohol, crazy wine. So if you like that stuff, you're probably not going to like it.
Right.
Right. If you're okay with, something that's a little more, less oaky, much more easy to drink and just lighter on your palate. It probably goes better with a lot of foods than, you're in good shape.
Yeah, exactly. And I after being up there for just a few days, but we spent significant time with a couple of winemakers and tasted a lot of wines. It wasn't just here's my 4 I want to try. We had some really personal experiences and drank through quite a bit of the portfolio of a lot of the winemakers. And I'd say consistently across all of them, what you pick up on the reds is just this freshness and energy, right? It kind of reminds you of the cool climate, the Italian varieties in the cool climate part of, Alto Adige, right? Or if, you're drinking anything up there, or, it's got really good aromatics. It's got really good acid. It's got really good energy. It's not a flabby big wine. It's more of a kind of light on its feet, light on the palate, but there's just this tremendous energy and freshness, I think, to the reds.
So when you say Alto Adige, just for our audience and for me, because I'm only thinking of one wine right now, like rattle off just a couple of the different varietals that are in the northern Italy.
What I'm thinking of cool climate, kind of European red wines. I think of like Tirol up in northern part of Italy. I think of Zweigelt or Blaufränkisch in Austria. And they're actually doing a lot of Blaufränkisch, or what they might call Lemberger in New York sometimes. Same grape. But really, it's these kind of cooler climate, higher acid, more light-bodied red wines. But then they're still doing Cabernet Sauvignon, they're still doing Merlot, and they're making Syrah. And it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but the ones that are doing it well, I'm not going to say it's Northern Rhone, but it's more Northern Rhone than it is Valley Floor, Napa Valley, Syrah. So, again, it's got that pepperiness, that gaminess, that kind of beef jerky smoked bacon note. And it's just really, really impressive. So, yeah, I'm just a huge fan.
I wouldn't have thought that would, I guess it makes sense from a standpoint of the climate, but I wouldn't have necessarily thought that Syrah would work up there.
Yeah, they're not doing it everywhere. There's a couple of people that are playing with it, and then there's a couple of people that are doing a really good job with it, I would say. Hector Wine Company in Hector, New York, on the southeast side. That southeast side of Seneca Lake is called the Banana Belt. It's just even a warmer spot than anywhere else around the Finger Lakes, and they're getting things like Syrah to full ripeness.
Sorry, you said Banana Belt, like the fruit, the banana?
It's called the Banana Belt. Yeah.
Okay, that's fun.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this? You're drinking the 17. I've got the 18.
Yeah. So this is the 17. I don't have. I need to drink more Cabernet Franc. I don't have a ton of experience with it. I am getting, I am getting a bell pepper note, which can be, usually comes through, but it's not overt, right? It's not crazy. It's a subtle note there. There's a lot of blackness, black fruit. Whether that's plums or blackberries, it's very, it almost smells like it's going to be light to drink, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, it's not overwhelming me or anything like that. So this is probably one of those wines where you could kind of, you know what, I'm not going to drink it for 15 minutes. We're just going to sit here. If my wife's probably getting home from work soon, she's going to walk in the room. She's like, what is that? That's
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're drinking the 17, and I'm drinking the 18. Now the 17 was a better vintage. But you mentioned some of those bell pepper notes. I'm getting quite a bit of the bell pepper notes here on the 18. 17 was kind of a tale of two seasons. You had the beginning was very wet and I think they had more rain in July, they were telling me, than all of 2016. Okay. So they were really worried. Didn't look like it was going to shape up to be a great vintage. And then they had this. August was kind of iffy, still kind of wet. And then September and October were completely dry and much warmer than usual. So the grapes actually got a lot of hang time and really fully ripened. So 17 wound up being this great vintage. 18 was a little bit more challenging. Most of the winemakers I talked to up there said they really had to work for a good wine. They made some good wines, but there was a lot of work in the field, a lot of work at the table, and a lot of work in the cellar to get a good wine because there was just wetness and disease pressure the whole time. So to really get your grapes fully ripened through a relatively wet and cool season was a challenge. Although some people will say it's more typical of Finger Lakes, right? So I'm drinking the 18. I'm picking up a lot of those bell pepper notes on this Cab Franc. And some people that love that would say this is a little bit more typical cool climate Cabernet Franc nose. You're getting a little bit more riper fruit, a little more black fruit. I'd say what I'm picking up on this 18 at least is a little bit more fresh strawberry. A little bit of red currant, but it's kind of that fresh. Whereas I think sometimes maybe the 17, and I haven't had that one for a while, it kind of verges on more of a baked fruit note. This has more of a fresh cut fruit note. This is a little bit more energetic, a little bit more, lifted aromatics, I would say, than what I remember on the 17. And I have a 17 from another producer here that I opened as well. It's definitely a different wine. The other thing on this is I think 17, Morton told me, was the first year he started doing his Cab Franc in larger oak casks. So really trying to let the fruit speak, right? And one of the things that I like about Morton is he embraces that vintage variation. He's not trying to achieve a house style every year. He's really trying to show what that year was all about. And those larger 600-gallon casks really, I think, help to do that, right? They don't mask the fruit with a ton of oak. So you kind of get what the vineyard gives you, I think, a little bit more.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the whole science of it, and just, all of the details that go into making a wine are just, beyond me, but it's always fascinating to understand. Yeah, it's almost like there's like, and maybe just because I read the back of the label, it said baking spices, but like kind of what you were saying, where it's more of a baked fruit. It's almost, for me, it's coming through as like a perfumey note or something like that, which I've been getting a lot lately in red wines. I don't know if it's just where my head is at.
Yeah, it's funny too.
Popcorn spit cup. My wife will be so thrilled. She's not a fan.
Yeah, that's not
polarizing topic. That one, I'll tell you.
That's not a fun thing to clean up at the end of the night.
No.
It's funny though. You mentioned that the perfume thing is in your head. I tell people a lot of times, what I'm smelling, what I'm tasting in a wine is literally. I mean, the way I explain it to people is I say, have you ever had steak and onions? You probably know exactly what that tastes like. Explain it to me.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do when we taste wine. I'm trying to give you.
It is hard because there's always something that there was a video recently that I did where I was like, oh my God, this is exactly like that candy and I'm like, I don't know what candy it is, but it is exactly like that. So if you ever run into that candy, whatever the hell it is, but it's so hard to put into words.
It is. Admittedly, I don't think I'm very good at that. I think I do a lot of research to understand what went into making the wine. I don't think I'm the best taster. I know what I like, and I know what pleases my palate. But when I drink things right out of the gates, if someone asks me my opinion, or if I'm drinking something blind, I struggle with that a little bit. It's hard and it's humbling if you think you know exactly what Merlot and Syrah and Cabernet taste like, and then you do them blind. I've called Rioja Bordeaux. You can get it wrong, and it's just what are you doing at that point in time too? What did you eat before you had the wine? It's just everything can change things, and that's something I'm always trying to get better at is how do I explain this wine, or what are those notes? I know exactly what that smells like, but I forget the word for that, or I forget the candy that smells like.
How do you translate it?
Is that blueberry or is that blackberry? I can't really remember what blueberry tastes like versus blackberry.
I'm on the it's funny because my palate is not very sensitive. Like I'm not a super taster, if you will, like whatever those folks are called, right? My wife is. Like she'll pick up nuances that that piss me off, frankly, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, how was I not able to taste that? Or like, I get that. Now I taste it. It's amazing, like where some people just have it and they can sense all these nuances. And I would imagine that's probably what goes into being a winemaker, being able to try to, figure all that out. You have to be able to sense all those differences. Actually, I'm getting a minty note now too. I don't want to call it menthol, but it's minty.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a 17, and it's a totally different producer. It's Lamoreaux Landing, and the lighting here is terrible, so it's probably not going to come through. Let's see if I can get that up there.
I'll write it up if we. Oh, there you go. It's good enough.
So different producer, other side of the lake, Seneca Lake though as well, and this one did see some new oak, so it is a little different, but. I was picking up a menthol note on this earlier when I just poured a little.
Oh, really? We'll do a shout out to my college roommate senior year, John Lamoreaux, even though I know he's not watching this video. And he's not associated with Lamoreaux Landing. But what are the chances of that?
That's hysterical.
Mint or the menthol is something that I tend to get in some of the Italian Nebbiolos and some Spanish wines. Like and I find like the further you go up, the higher end wines that I've tasted that I've never actually purchased but gone to tastings and have the privilege of tasting, like they come through with this like menthol-y zip that just kind of stings you. Like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
I'm getting that a little bit from here, which again, another reason to go explore the Finger Lakes, right?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff going on up there, and you know that 17. I don't have the Cab Franc, but I still have their Merlot, and that was, I think, one of my top 2 or 3 wines of my trip last year was their 17 Merlot. The Cab Franc is also delicious, but yeah, it definitely has a little bit more plushness than this 18 has a little bit more, I would say, tart fruit, a little bit more herbaceousness. The 17, I think, has a little bit more of a round mouthfeel, a little bit softer. And I think that menthol note instead of that really herbal green pepper note that I get a little bit more of on the 18.
Yeah. Interesting. So so like if I were to go do a tour of the Finger Lakes, right? And I have to hit 5 wineries. I'm making this up as I'm going along, as you can tell, right?
Yeah.
So Finger Lakes, 5 wineries. I'm going to use this hand because this is better in the camera. So 4 wineries in addition to this guy, right? What are the other 4 that I should be making sure I hit when I visit?
I mean, it's a tough question because it depends on what you like and it depends on what kind of experience you're going for. If we just say best wines, hands down, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I'll give you my favorite for breadth of portfolio. I think there are Riesling makers up there that are just doing Riesling and doing it really well, and you should check out. I think there are people that are just doing reds that you should check out. But if you really think kind of across the portfolio from start to finish, Ravines, obviously. Hector is definitely one of my favorites. They're just making some incredible wines. Beyond that, I would say Herman Wiemer, Dr. Constantin Frank. Those are really the 2 kind of pioneers that worked with vinifera and first brought the European varieties to bear there. And they are making a wide variety of wines, and I think across the portfolio are very solid. Some of the best reds I had, just specifically the reds, Shaw Vineyards, a guy named Steve Shaw. He is to prove the age worthiness of these wines, and they do age incredibly well. I think he's just now releasing his 13s and 14s. So he's aging about 8 to 9 years, his Cab Franc.
He's holding those back?
Holding them back that long, and they are stunning red wines. On the white side, there's a German guy at Chemeter who's making some exceptional Rieslings. There's a winery called Element Wines that's making some really good Blaufränkisch and Cab Franc. I know I'm forgetting probably a ton. I'm just trying to think of some of my other favorites. Yeah, but if you hit Shaw, Ravines, Forge Cellars is another really good place.
Okay.
Really, Rick Rainey is a guy that's been up there for years, and he was partnered with the guy Justin Boyette, one of the winemakers at Hector, and also with Louis Barrault from the Southern Rhone, from Gigondas, Chateau de Saint-Côme. Mm-hmm. They partnered together in this venture, and he's making, I want to say he might be making like 13 to 15 to maybe 19 Rieslings a year. He's making from every site around the Finger Lakes. He's making good Cab Franc, and he's making some Pinot now as well. So he's worth checking out. But there's just so many places. Hit me up, and there's a couple other Instagram friends that I follow that actually live in the region and have been really my guide to kind of get me going. So.
Oh yeah, no, I've piggybacked on all of them. Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll reach out to you separately because I want to throw a lot of that good info into the show notes because I think there's a lot of value there. So we're gonna wrap this up. I mean, thank you so much for joining. Naturally, people need to follow you, whether that's on YouTube or Instagram, or those are the 2 main platforms you work with, or do you do stuff on some other platforms? Have you experimented with like Facebook groups or things like that?
I have a Facebook page. I mean, it's not very well followed, and the analytics that I see on it doesn't reach a ton of people. It's a lot of my friends. So when I do post something there, I do notice it drives a lot of traffic if I have a blog post or a new video. But mainly I'm doing YouTube and Instagram's my primary platform for sure.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So we'll put all that stuff down below. But again, I think following you on Instagram, following you on subscribing on YouTube. Hey, subscribe to this channel too. This one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I think again, get on. Certainly, if you're on the East Coast, right, you got to get on the Bin412 mailing list so you understand when when the events are happening, because you never know when you're going to find yourself in the Pittsburgh area, or if you're an easy drive, it's worth the trip to coordinate it with one of those visits. I think, unfortunately now I've moved to Providence, which is a lot further from Pittsburgh than Washington, D.C., because that was an easy drive, until all this COVID stuff hit. I was like, okay, I'm just be able to drive up for one of these guys. But
yeah, I'm from Baltimore originally, so I've made that trip a million times. It's
is that right? Okay.
Yeah. But it's interesting too. Even if you can't join the events, one of the things that I started doing over COVID that I really had a lot of fun with, and has actually kind of taken off a little bit more than the events, is private virtual tastings. So if anyone's ever interested in, Wine 101 or American wine regions, or diving deep on a specific variety. I've done a couple of those where I've charged $5 or $10 a head, and I, at that time, gave it all to the food bank just because we were in such a crazy place with COVID. But I've actually been booking quite a few private, personal events and corporate events now as well. So even if you can't make it to Pittsburgh, I'm happy to jump on and do some type of multimedia educational type presentation and drink along with you and kind of guide you through different regions and different varieties.
That's great. So if you're on the West Coast or you're in England, doesn't matter.
That's right. I'm sure we're reaching all those folks, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think there's one guy that's probably watching from the UK. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much for spending the time, right? And I had a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. Maybe a different class.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being guest number one. Maybe I can come back and.
I'm hoping it's an honor. Ultimately, it'll feel like an honor. Right now, it probably doesn't feel like much, but
no, it's great. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.